welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show, your go-to spot for all your disaster prep information and how to survive wild SHTF scenarios. Plus, we'll chat about the chaos of the world, throw in weather updates, and cover any topics the All Hazards Prepper has in his head this week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and join us on social media. Now, let's welcome your fearless leader and the brains behind the All Hazards Prepper, Blake.
Welcome back to the All Hazards Prepper Show. This is your host, Blake. Hope everyone is staying aware, staying prepared, and staying alive out there. This is your new episode for the week. This is going to be a little bit of a unique show. We've never done this here on the All Hazards Prepper, but we're doing a joint show with another podcast. So in a little bit, it will go to me and Jeff, who is the podcast host and founder of the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. We had a great hour-long conversation just the other night, and we got deep into prepping, talked, about myself as a prepper, and then we talked about him as a prepper, me being, someone that's come from emergency services field in the career of emergency management, and then himself more of what he describes as a blue-collar prepper, someone that he did start out in firefighting, but just preps because it makes sense and because he has a family and he has people that rely on him. So definitely go check out the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. He has some great guests on. He has great content as well, and just something different that you can go check out. Definitely go check him out. But anyway, so let's transfer it over. You'll hear us or hear me back at the end of our discussion. Hope everyone enjoys the podcast. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Hey, Blake, what's going on, buddy? I'm good, man. How about yourself?
Doing good. Getting used to the warm weather here in the Carolinas. So super glad that it is warm now and not freezing cold and snow on the ground. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had a little warm spell here in East Tennessee as well. And I think we got bad weather moving in on the weekend, but it's been good. It's been good this week. It's been beautiful.
It has been. Yeah, I saw the definitely get it. And then the severe weather season, starting to monitor that. And definitely it seemed like it'll be a once a week thing. So it's kind of
right.
What happens in severe weather. And it always happens on the weekends too. It's like whenever I'm trying to go and do something, it's it goes that way. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, this is great to do this show together. I definitely love the chat with you, and I definitely have some questions for you I'd like to ask you. I'm sure you probably like to ask me the same. I know you've got a really long history of working in emergency services and the preparedness world. In all your experience, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen?
Oh, wow. I'll go with the emergency management side because the fire side I got way too much. Definitely. Backstory here. I went out to Wyoming for a year to be an emergency manager. I was dating at the time. Now my future wife, or now she is my wife. So anyway, I came out to Wyoming just to see something different and stayed there for about a year until she told me I had to come back because she was not living out there and too much snow. But whenever I showed up, there was 200,000 acres of wildlands on fire. And that was crazy for me to understand because as a man from the Carolinas, that's kind of, imagining 200,000 acres is a lot. So, and I still, I didn't really get a grasp of it until a wildland firefighter, a chief actually took me out on the fire, and we kept riding and kept riding and kept riding. And it was just crazy to see, how wildfires spread, the damage that they do, how it just crowns the tree. And next thing you know, everything is in front of you is on fire. There was a couple nights where the wind was so bad. Wind out there in the west of that part, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. It can be a windy day, and by a windy day, I'm talking like 60 mile, 70 mile per hour winds. It really can drive the fire. It was doing, I think, there was a few days it did a couple miles a day. Definitely I saw some crazy things out there. I saw an 18-wheeler flip over in front of me because of the wind. Something, these are things that we don't, if you're from the Carolinas or from the Southeast or the Northeast or, not from the West, you don't really, you can't really grasp your head around, some of these types of disasters that occur. We're used to, and then if you were probably to take someone from out there and bring them here and put them as an emergency manager on the coast in September and see, hurricanes and tropical weather come through, they probably have no clue what to do. And, it's just an everyday or every year type of thing for us. So definitely seeing that. Definitely was probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I definitely have some more, but that was definitely something eye-opening as an emergency manager. Getting to see it in that point of view, it was just crazy to see.
Wow. Yeah, you hit home with a couple of those things because number one, I'm a truck driver. Is my 9 to 5, and number two, wildfires. I don't know, you probably don't ever hear about the news here in East Tennessee, but that's one of our biggest threats here.
Yeah,
like we've got one in Sevierville right now, which is right outside of Pigeon Forge, which is a big tourist area, and we've got one raging right now. And actually, a couple of months ago, I live in Seymour, and I had one on which is not too far away either from Pigeon Forge, and I live on the side of a mountain, and we literally had a wildfire start a baseball throw away from my house.
Wow.
And
wow.
Yeah, it was scary stuff, man. We thankfully I'm a prepper and we had everything ready to go if need be. Thankfully we didn't have to evacuate, but it was that close. And I think it ended up being like 14 acres, I want to say. So you hit home with two of those for me. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're seeing as an emergency manager, we're seeing more wildfires, especially urban, wildfires type things start. I mean, look at the LA wildfires, something no one would have ever thought of. And then you go and see, those types of fires in the urban environments. Take Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, just a few weeks ago, had a urban type wildfire. And when I mean urban, it means it's not just like out in the woods, kind of like I was talking about in Wyoming. It is interfacing with development, with houses, with businesses, with human populations. It's not just out in the wild, and that makes it for anyone in emergency services. That's an extra factor. You have to plan for it. You have to work around because not only you have a wildfire in your hands, you could have a structure fire or multiple structure fires all at once. So, and the evacuations and the dealing with the human aspect of it is a whole different ball game. Whenever it's just out in the woods and it's just contained out there, it's a lot different when you're trying to fight it. And there's human life at risk. So as an emergency manager, that's something I've seen recently or over the last 5-10 years. You're seeing more types of fires, wildfires that are coming in these urban areas. The why of that, I don't know. There's a lot of different things of the why, but you really have to prepare for those things. Having an evacuation plan, knowing how to get out, multiple ways of how to get out. Having a go kit. And practicing FireWise. If no one knows what FireWise is, go Google it. But essentially, it's good practices around your house. So you're removing debris, removing leaves, making sure there's nothing on your roof, and doing things of that nature really help prevent or mitigate if there is a fire, occurring, or God forbid you start the fire and it impacts your home. So yeah, definitely something more of.
Absolutely, yep. In my show, I tend to focus on prepping for the blue collar worker since that's what I am myself. What advice would you give to someone new to prepping?
Yeah, I think really new to prepping, and I talk about this on the show. I talk about this. This is something I do as an emergency manager. It's really the starting of it's easy. It's not gathering resources. It's not developing a plan. It's really developing and identifying those risks and hazards. If I'm here in the Carolinas, I'm not really worried about a volcano. Someone in Hawaii is probably worried about a volcano. They're going to prepare for that. You really have to identify your hazards. And once you identify those hazards, really ranking them. How often are you seeing this hazard occur? Are you seeing, on a daily basis, this hazard occur? If it's, a flood or severe weather, or maybe in your community you have maybe an air quality issue due to industry or something. Everyone's hazard is going to be different too, based on your health conditions or yourself, or where you live, or stages of life. And really, looking at those hazards, and hazards don't have to be, the natural hazards. Maybe it's crime in your community. Maybe it's, there's, increased car break-ins or something like that. Really identifying those hazards. It's an all hazards approach. That's why I call it the all hazards prepper. It's an all hazards approach. Everything that you could think of that could go wrong is a hazard. And once you identify those, get it down to a list of about 10 and ranking it. Then you start planning and start getting those resources for those hazards. If your number one hazard is you have floods in your community, every month, or a couple times a year, and they're catastrophic, or they you live in a coastal area that sees flooding or something like that, you're probably your preps are going to be evolved around that. Your preps are going to be sandbags, sand, having an evacuation plan, things of that nature. If your hazard is you live in a wildfire prone area, you're going to have practice fire wise, you're going to have an evacuation plan, and you're going to develop ways to quickly get out. And a lot of these types of preps and resources and plans, they are versatile. They're not they're only going to be used for this type of disaster. Once you start preparing for a few types of disasters that are on your list, you probably have covered most of them. Starting with the food, the resources, the water, developing an emergency plan. That's something my company has. The All Hazards Emergency Management Group, LLC, we offer a household emergency operations plan. It's definitely a lot more detailed than your average household emergency operations plan, because this is what I do for a living. I develop emergency plans. So I develop this with the family, with the individual in mind, really taking a lot and putting it together, which I'm sure we'll talk about here. But that's really where I would start as a prepper, is really identifying those hazards, those risks that you're seeing in your community.
Absolutely. I've said the exact same thing in so many of my shows. So as podcasters, me and you we both still work a full-time job, and we do this in our spare time. I know, you touched briefly about what you do, but could you tell the listeners a little bit more about your 9 to 5 for the people on my show?
Sure. So I am a emergency manager for a pretty large healthcare system in southeastern North Carolina, and I've been doing that for almost 8 months now. But previous to that, I've been in higher education. I've been in K-12 education doing emergency management. I was, like I said, a county coordinator in Albany County, Wyoming. I don't know where that is. Google it. Beautiful place. Definitely cool place to visit. And look and definitely see a different part of the world. But started my career in volunteer firefighting at the age of 16. Quickly in college realized emergency management was more my gig, so I kept doing the volunteer stuff while doing the emergency management and growing that career. But essentially my job is to prepare my healthcare organization for all hazardous disasters, is really looking at risk and preparing for them, whether it's developing an emergency plan that covers, a hazard that we identify. We have a pretty robust emergency management, emergency planning program, developing training and exercises. I do a lot of that. This is, things that all emergency managers really do, is really developing is emergency planning, developing training and exercises, training for those that are responding. In my area, it's going to be more of the medical side. If you go to a county emergency manager, he or she's probably focusing on, county type emergency response, whether that's the fire department, police department, EMS, 911, something like that. Or if you go talk to a K-12 emergency manager, which I was a few months ago, it's how do I get a principal or an assistant principal or a teacher to respond to emergency? So anyway, that's kind of what emergency management is. It's really looking at it from an all hazard approach, preparing that organization for a disaster. Of course, there's administrative stuff I do as well. You if you're in a county or a state, you're dealing with grants and budgets and stuff like that. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that a whole lot anymore, which is great. But really, it's preparing that organization for disasters that happen in your area. I do a lot of coordinating, a lot of community building with my county, my local, my state, non-governmental, and my healthcare partners. So that way, whenever we do have an incident, it's not just us that is responding. It's I can call upon help. And really developing those relationships is a key thing in emergency management. So I definitely, if someone's listening and you are in a career path and you want to change or something, or if you're just starting out in college, or maybe you are that volunteer firefighter, highly recommend emergency management. It's a growing field. It's definitely becoming more professional. It used to be, and still kind of is, former fire chiefs, former police chiefs, former firefighters or whatever. It's becoming a little bit more professional where you can get degrees in it. I did get a degree type in it in college. Was lucky enough to do training with FEMA and other state organizations. So it's definitely becoming a more professional field. But that's kind of what I do on a daily basis.
And it's a needed field, and it's not going away. It's not going away anytime soon. It's kind of like IT with computers. It's job security. It's not something that's going anywhere because the disasters.
I definitely have a lot of job security. I say that a lot, and there's a lot of job security in emergency management,
Absolutely.
Especially today. Whether if it's dealing with natural stuff or man-made stuff or, or just even technological stuff, things go wrong on a daily basis within organizations, and you have to find ways to manage it and prepare for it.
Definitely. So in your time prepping, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
That's interesting. There's a lot. Really?
That's good. That's a good answer.
I think my biggest thing that I've done is I would say probably about 2 years ago. And this was really whenever me and my wife moved into a house or apartment, and I was able to kind of get all my preps together and figure out what I have. I inventoried. And it's probably something a lot of people don't do. They just have preps laying every which way, and it may or may not be in one room or one location or in a bin somewhere. And that's really something I worked on. I'm a little OCD. My wife is also a little OCD, which is great in a marriage to both be that way. And so I really sat down and I inventoried everything I have. Everything I have is on a spreadsheet. Everything I have in bins is marked on the bin. It has on there when it expires, when I bought it, if it's a food or water product or something that does expire, and that way it's all in an inventory. And that not only helps me, and whenever I go to the store and be like, this has expired, I need to throw that out and replace that. And rotating your preps is definitely good, but it also helps me identify what I need, and it's also great if you lost it. If you have a house fire, you have a flood, you have a disaster, and unfortunately you couldn't take all your preps with you, or you couldn't, get out fast enough, or whatever it may be. You can show that to the insurance agency if you have, good house or renter's insurance, and prove that you have this stuff. So I think that's probably my greatest prep that I've done is actually organization and tracking of what I have. That's something we do in emergency management too. A lot of emergency management shops, we have a lot of resources, a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there in the organization that might not belong to the emergency manager, but belongs to other departments that have emergency response functions. And tracking those items and having resources, knowing what resources you have, and on a list is definitely something I do as well. So, like I tell a lot of people, what I do in prepping is also what I do 9 to 5. It's all very similar in what I'm doing. It's just prepping is on a smaller scale. Emergency management is on a definitely lot larger scale.
Right. So with that, what's next for your podcast, for the All Hazards Prepper Show, and for your emergency management company? What are you looking to expand or to do in the future?
Yeah, so we just launched whenever I launched the All Hazards Prepper, I had I really, it was my wife's saying, Blake, you have all these people, family, friends, that reach out to us because they're going through disasters, they go through hurricanes, they go through severe weather, and they're asking you what to do. And you do it on a daily basis. So she was like, you need to expand. Let's talk. How to you see influencers all the time on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, talking about whatever product they're trying to sell. Let's try to do some preparedness on that. And I don't like to call myself an influencer. I'm definitely not an influencer. I am a person trying to get people to prepare. It's really what I want to do. That's what I spent the last year doing, developing the All Hazards Prepper. In the back of my mind, I've always had the thought, we could go into consulting one day. We could, when you retire, you could, launch a consulting agency. Didn't really think about it until, I don't know, maybe July. I started working on this household emergency operations plan because I was developing an emergency operations plan or emergency plan for me and my wife. And it was me going, on these websites, on FEMA's websites, on ready.gov. And I was like, there's so much stuff out here, but it's not what I want. It's not detailed like I want. It's not like an emergency plan like I develop. So I started developing a template. And this is what today is the household emergency operations plan. It took me 7 months to write. I really didn't finish it until Christmas.
Wow.
So after that, my wife was like, "We got to find some way to. If you want to, now that we filled it out, this is on. We need to, talk. Let's figure out how we could sell this or how we could get this out to more people." And it's kind of been trial and error. I haven't sold as much as I thought I would, but I developed a website. It's on PayHip. If you, I'm sure you'll tag all my social media. It's on my link tree, and if you go there, you can purchase the household emergency operations plan. We're actually doing a giveaway right now. If you go on my social media, you can enter and actually get your own household emergency kit for our operations plan for free if you enter the giveaway. But really, that was the launch of I kind of launched what I thought I would do later in life a little bit sooner. I threw in some consulting on the side. I haven't, I don't. That's something kept on a smaller scale. If a family reached out to me, they want to walk through developing a little bit more robust emergency plan, developing some training, or really looking at preparedness in that sense. Or if a small business wants to do so, someone with less than 50 people in their workplace, I would be happy to do something, or an event venue. Nothing large scale right now. There's definitely a lot of emergency management companies out there that do governmental contracts with counties, with local municipalities to do training and exercises, emergency management planning, stuff like that. But for now, that's kind of where we are at. The next year really is getting that household emergency operations plan to more people and getting them to fill that out. I really truly feel if you have this plan, you are way more better, or you're way more prepared than 99% of Americans. Most Americans today have no clue what to do when a disaster occurs. They think FEMA is going to be right there the next day to help them. And I have news for you that not even FEMA will be there, but I doubt if the state will be there. Your county resources, your local municipalities will be there, but during a large-scale disaster, they're going to be overwhelmed.
They're going to be exhausted. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're exhausted. They're, all resources. It takes time to get those resources in there. Look, right now, the big thing is Hurricane Helene is in Western North Carolina. I have a friend that lives out there. My brother and dad have been out there on mission trips. I've had other people talk to me about that. It took FEMA a week or two to get there. And even then, it wasn't fully mobilized. And, you still got people living in houses that were, in the flood. They got out, and, now the flood waters have receded, and they're just still living in there. No, utilities, it's still cold or hot, or, whatever the temperature was. And at that time, it was getting cold. So, really having these plans, having, some resources is going to put you way far more ahead of the game than your average American if you're able to do, fill out this type of household emergency operations plan, able to get some resources, able to get, food, water, a generator, things like that, you're way more better prepared than your average American. So that's really where we're at. On the show, I really I'm looking to do more episodes like this, is doing something like more joint type things. There's a lot of people out there that have prepping podcasts like I do. I don't really. I don't really get too much into this is how many followers I have or anything like that. It's really just me going and talking and getting the knowledge out there. If I could touch one person to make them better prepared, I've done my job. So that's something
great.
I talk with the emergency expert with Chris. He's on I think he's on X. He's big on Instagram. He's definitely a lot further ahead of the game in terms of social media than I am. But he's also an emergency manager. We talk quite. We've had a couple times on the show, and that's something we always talk about. Is we can just get one person better prepared. We've done our job. We've done what we wanted to set out to do. And that's really what I'm looking to do, is just get people better prepared.
Well said. Good advice.
Yeah. Sure. So I guess I'll just kind of take it over now and really ask, Jeff some questions here. Like we talked about before, this is a joint show. So, Jeff, kind of kick us off. What made you decide to become a prepper? You're not, you don't come from emergency management. You don't come from emergency services. What made you decide to become a prepper?
I actually did do some. I actually am a former EMT and volunteer firefighter. I didn't do it for a very long period of time, but yeah, I actually am a former licensed EMT basic in North Carolina, and I was a volunteer firefighter for a few years. So I do have a small background in it. Blake, I don't know at what point and at what age or what time that I was like, you know what, I'm a prepper. I'm going to be a prepper. I can't pinpoint when it was, but it hit. And when it hit, it's like a bug, and it hit hard. And I don't know. I saw what was going on in the world around me. I have a little different show than you do. Of course, I do a lot of prepping stuff, but I do a lot of politics, of course. I do a little paranormal, a little conspiracy theories. So I'm a little, I get a little bit further out there than you do with all your stuff. But, not getting into any of that on this show, I saw what was going on in the world around me. And that was enough for me to know that it's time to prepare for the worst. And, now I've got a family, and when that hits even harder when you got a family, because it's not just you anymore. You got I have my wife and I have my kids to take care of. So that changed everything for me, especially that made me even deeper into prepping. So, and I do have a little background in emergency services, but I say on my show, I consider myself a self-made prepper. So, I really don't know. I can't pinpoint an exact time, but man, when it hit, and I've been doing it for a pretty good long time now. So, and that's part of my show too, is I wanted to share with people my experience and my knowledge, and the same as you, try to help people and try to put some good information out there as well.
Absolutely. Yes. I've listened to several of your episodes over the last few weeks. You have definitely a great podcast, definitely like-minded in a lot of sense. But yes, I do try to keep mine more prepping related. That's great. And that's, really, that's what people need to do, is go out and really just prepare, because they have a family, and know that it's important just to know that, it's not just going to be you, or it's not just, oftentimes during a disaster, it's just you, and you have to, work around it and prep for it.
And that's fine, but it's just a whole different set of variables when you throw, young children and a family into it, and you got to take that into account when you're prepping.
It does. It brings in a whole different account. I talked with, what was it? It was the emergency preparedness guy. He has a quite large family, and we talked about kids in disasters and talking about how you do a disaster drill with them, and it's just completely different than how you would do it if it's just like me and my wife. So whenever you have kids involved, it brings in a whole different aspect, and something you have to prepare for. So Jeff, is there like a certain disaster that keeps you up at night? Is there something that that really worries you more than others?
There is, and that is modern warfare, and that is, I would say, probably an EMP attack is what concerns me the most. And the reason, I mean, everything you should be concerned about everything, period, every day. But the reason I say that is because, in my personal opinion, you may agree or disagree with me. I think it's the hardest thing to prepare for.
It is.
Because it can happen right in an instant, just like that. And depending on, how far in the atmosphere, I mean, the whole grid in the entire country could be down. And this isn't something that, that can be fixed quickly. This is major. I mean, this could literally shut our entire country and our infrastructure down. And I think people don't understand that, how deep that could get. I mean, you've talked about on your show about the SHTF situations. I mean, there is no greater situation than that, than in my personal opinion. I mean, I prepare for everything, and I always stress in my show that a good prepper prepares for every scenario, no matter what. But, I've talked about EMPs before, and, everybody's like, oh, get a Faraday cage, this and that. Well, you can't put a Faraday cage around your refrigerator. I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to be able to use it around your toaster, around your washing machine. Because if it's a powerful enough EMP, yeah, you can get a surge protector for your home. But if it's close enough and powerful enough, man, it's gonna knock out everything.
Yep.
And then your electric is not going to be worth anything at that point. Your generator might not be worth anything if it's powerful enough. I mean, that's not necessarily a likely scenario, but it's possible. You know what I mean? And that's the one that to me just worries me more than anything, because it's just it'll come so quick. At least some of the other hazards, you might have a little bit of lead time to prepare for them. That's the one that's just going to just be like, wham, it's on us. And now what do we do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think that it is the hardest thing to plan for. And it's not, it's not even looking at an emergency management aspect. It's not something that, that organizations and government really prepares for either.
No,
Because it's something that's going to happen, and it's going to happen so fast that you're not going to even realize what occurred. And I've used before, I don't know if I get into, even though they're usually terrible to watch or in terms of how they work and the prepping side, but there's a show out there called Jericho, and it's literally what that is an EMP occurs. They're driving down the highway, and next thing you know, a school bus just wrecks, and everything wrecks because it's taking out the cars, and everyone's, every car and vehicle now has a motherboard or has a computer in it, and it takes it out. And it just crashes, and they have no clue what caused the crash or what things until they look up in the sky and see a mushroom cloud. And that's just a great example, of how fast something like this will happen and how ill prepared, most, if not all, Americans are, let alone governments and organizations and stuff like that. And really, you look at it and go, well, you look at the risk there and how even though the risk is high, or not the risk, but the chances are low, but what could happen and the devastation is high there. So that's, probably why people and organizations don't really prepare for it. But as a prepper, you can prepare for it in some sense. You could think about it at least.
And you can at least, that's right. You can at least have some of the things to prepare for it, and at least know that it could happen. Just knowing and having that knowledge, that mindset that it could happen. That right there puts you ahead of the game. Oh, because at least you're thinking about it and you're preparing for that, for the possibility. Yeah. Because and
that's something, a lot of people don't do. I have a bag in the back of my truck, and if I have to, my truck breaks down the side of the road, I can just take the bag with me, and I can at least get home or get somewhere where I can, be sheltered. I have, in my area, in my community, I identify, some spaces, hey, if my truck breaks down right now, even if it just breaks down and I have to, walk or something, where can I go? And, just thinking like that is, paranormal to a lot of people nowadays, but to a prepper, that is something we think about. We think about the worst days that could happen. That's what I do as emergency manager every day. I live in, unfortunately, you have to be positive, but you live in negativity. You live in, thinking about bad things and right. what could happen. And because of that, you're better prepared, but you have
that's
to.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just think that's the scenario that, nobody can ever truly prepare for.
Absolutely. No.
So, I mean, a home surge protector isn't going to stop, be the end all.
No.
That's what people seem to think.
Yeah, and there's products out there. There's things. There's you can get this and that they say it will protect
For
it.
cars, and
But
I've seen them.
but how do we know if we you can't truly test that? So how do you truly know? I guess is my and then you got to look at the risk. Am I going to pay $1,000 for this to protect my car for something that I don't
And
know
then
if
it
I'll
failed.
ever use? Yeah, and then it failed, and then I just wasted $1,000.
And then that's
But
$1,000 you could have put towards something else in your preps,
exactly,
especially if you're a
yeah.
budget prepper.
Yeah.
That you could have better prepared for in another aspect. So
Yes, yeah,
that's
yeah.
a tough one.
It is a tough one. So definitely something some people need to think about and do some research on. These TV shows out there, in some sense, yes, they're not or movies are not the greatest thing when looking about preparedness and all that and how it may actually go down. But they do show, that some of the worst disasters that could happen, and that being one of them. So talking a little bit about resources, Jeff, what are some, resources that, every prepper probably should have when starting out?
Well, for me, I start with the basics. I mean, it just depends on your budget, on what you've already got, how long you've been in it. But if you're new to prepping, you start with square one. You start with survival. And what's the two things that no one can survive without? Food and water.
Food and water. Yep.
I mean, so that's your starting point right there. I mean, that's an easy starting point for somebody getting into it. You can't survive without food and water. So then you back up from that. What do you need next? You need shelter. And then you go. I did an episode. Actually, it was one of my very first shows, and it was called Prepping 101. And I have my own little catchphrase, I guess, 15 pillars of prepping, and I just talk about that, the different things, and I actually kind of somewhat rated them. And the ratings will change based on people, their needs, their budget, where they live. There's so many different variables in it, but when it comes down to it, food and water that's where you got to start. And then if you're on a budget, you just start with that, and then as you get a little extra money, you increase your food supply. You get a freshwater tank, rainwater collection tank outside. You build from that, and then once you feel pretty good about that, then you maybe move on to your defense and your other different variables of prepping. But that's to me, that's where you got to start, plain and simple.
Absolutely, yeah. Starting with that food and water is really essential. People always say, "Well, how much?" And that's always the question I get whenever I get, at first I get, "What do I need?" and second I get is, "How much?" And it's hard to judge, but really I tell people, buy what you can afford first. If you could go out and afford, uh, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 gallons of water, sure, go and buy it. But after you can only hold so much water, you can only hold so much food. Then you got to look at ways to filter water, to make water clean for you to digest and have. And if, food, there's tons of products out there. There's all these emergency food buckets are great for these short term, week 2 week type of disasters. As long as you have water and a way to cook. But after that, you really need to start looking at long term food storage options and growing your own food or having canning, things like that. Sustainability.
Exactly.
That was the word I was looking for. And
yep.
Or having your own chicken. People that have their own chickens today, they're doing great. I mean, you can't even go to the store.
Yeah, they're living good times right now with these egg prices.
Great times. Yeah, because we had chickens growing up. But side note here, but we had chickens growing up, and I was at home, and unfortunately they all died, and because they living in the country, coyotes and stuff like that. But I was talking with my dad. I was home a few weeks ago. And he's like, "We're going to get chickens again because we're really we use a lot of eggs, and well, right now it's kind of expensive." And he went, "But I got a problem. I can't find chickens anywhere. Can't find chicks. Can't find any." I'm like, there because no one wants to sell them. So it's kind of a lot of people are going back to, okay, well, I have the means and the way to house chickens, but now it's finding the chickens. And or if you you can get the chicks, of course, you go Tractor Supply or something, but it's going to take a little while to develop eggs off of those. So people are hoarding right now. So definitely something that a lot of people don't have and they don't think about. If you have the ways and means, if you live on an acre or two of land, you live out in the country, having a little garden. I live in an apartment and I have a little garden outside. I have a couple planter boxes and we grow our own vegetables in the summer and spring. I want chickens whenever we move in the summer. That's one task, but definitely, that's the key resource whenever we um, talk about what you really need. So really talking about prepping. How do you explain to others about prepping and why they should do it? If you're talking to someone, they have no clue about you or about prepping, and you tell them you're a prepper. How do you explain what prepping is and why you do it?
That has a lot of different answers.
Yep.
Because prepping is different to different people. But to me, your show name nails it. I mean, you have to prepare. You're not truly a prepper unless you prepare for everything.
Yep.
I used to watch. I talked about in my show. I used to watch Doomsday Preppers. Back in the '90s, whenever that was, late '90s, whenever that early 2000s. And I love that show. But I used to die laughing when I'd see that show because it's like this preparing for the Yellowstone eruption or the it's just some of the ridiculous things that they said that
Yes.
supposedly these people just prepare for this one particular thing that could happen. That's just foolish to me because being a prepper means I use the term a lot in my show, and it's situational awareness, and it's knowing what's around you, because being a true committed prepper isn't just about having a bunch of food and water and guns in your house. It's about understanding what's going on in the world around you, understanding the hazards that could or could not happen in your area where you live, in the whole country. What could happen? There's just so many different variables. I don't really have one set answer for that. I just kind of, what I would do if somebody asked me that, that's when I start asking them, where do you live? What's your budget? What are you looking to get out of it? What do you want to protect? What's important to you? Do you have a place to go? That's when I start asking questions back. And then you can kind of, go from there and figure out. But basically, it's just preparing for any and every scenario and situation that could possibly happen. That is what the definition to me of a prepper.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's going back to what we were talking earlier about starting this show, and that's that phrase, all hazards, is something that lives, breathes in every emergency manager's head. Is all hazards. Whenever we're looking at preparing, whenever we're looking at everything, we were taking an all hazards approach to it. So it was kind of easy for me to name the all hazards prepper because of that. That was something that there was a million things I could have named it, but that was it. And preparing for all hazards is what we have to do as preppers.
Absolutely.
Now, you might not prepare for, like I said earlier, if you live in the Carolinas or somewhere in the U.S. that doesn't have volcano, you might not prepare for that. But you're preparing for everything. And going back to what I watched Doomsday Preppers too growing up, and they were just they just talk. I mean, they're so specific on one type of thing. Like, I'm going to go to my bunker, and this is where we're going to live, and I have all these guns and all this food and all this water, and they were not prepared for all hazards.
I remember this one guy that bought a missile. Did you ever see the episode where the guy bought the nuclear missile silo?
Yes.
The dude had nothing. He didn't even have food and water. He literally just had a missile silo.
Yes.
I'm like,
what are you going to do?
I mean, I take that back. He did have water down at the bottom of it, I guess, that they collected. But then he still got to purify all that water.
Yeah.
And keep it. And I was just like, the guy didn't even have food. I was like, this is a joke. I mean, obviously this stuff's dramatized for TV, but it just, and I think I realized too, watching that show, how unprepared those people really are, watching it.
I mean, if a severe storm broke out or an epidemic or a pandemic or something like that, they were probably they were just struggling there. And then they probably went back and, that's something we do as emergency managers, and I recommend preppers do as well, is after those disasters occur, after you use your preps, go back and look at, your response. What
could I do better?
Yeah, what could I do better? How could I? That's something I do as an emergency manager after every incident that occurs. Is I develop an after action report. What did we do good? That's good to note. But what can we improve on? And developing a list of those areas for improvement, and then working on those areas for improvement. And that really, that will put you aside from a lot of preppers out there. So,
absolutely.
Jeff, talking about skills and resources, what are some things that you as a prepper want to work on in 2025? Whether it's a new skill or a new resource that you believe that's needed. What is some some prep projects that you're working on this year?
You know, man, to be honest with you, the one that I want to do the most, I don't have tons of time between this show and everything else, but where I'd say where I'm the weakest is probably communication. My father-in-law is a ham radio operator, and that is an incredible skill to have for any prepper. I do have ham radios, and they're set up. Thank you to my father-in-law for helping me with that, but I'm not a technology guy, so that's where I kind of struggle a little bit, and I think that's another thing with preppers that is very much lost in translation when it comes to prepping is with the grids down or something like that. You're not going to have your cell phone. You're not going to be able to communicate with people. These little walkie talkies are only going to reach a few hundred feet. You're going to be relying. Preppers are going to be using ham radios and repeaters to talk to each other, and I think that's the number one thing that I would like to improve on. I guess I do have some of that stuff, but do I know how to use it like I should? Probably not. I've got channels and repeaters and stuff set up, but having the knowledge base, and I stress in my show all the time, I have said so many times in my show, practice with your preps.
Yep.
Don't just, if they're not going to do you a ton of good other than food, if you don't know how to use them, run drills. I mean, you talk about that with emergency management plan. You got to run drills. You got to know how to use this stuff. Run drills, run practice scenarios. And I'll tell people for you, I just did in my last prepping show that I did was called The Prepared Home. And one of the things I suggested to everybody was to seek out somebody like Blake. If you are unsure about something, they're the experts. I am a self-made prepper. I feel like my knowledge is far, far above average, but I'm never going to claim to be Bear Grylls or anything like that. But, you guys are the ones that do it every day. Yeah, I have experience in the field, so I'm definitely, a leg up on a lot of people. But this is your job. This is your life. This is your career. These are the people that persons need to seek out to get help with that kind of thing. I mentioned like home defense. I talked about a lot of things with home defense. Go find a police officer. Police officers, you can probably attest to this. You guys love to show off your skills. I mean, just be honest. You love to show off your skills. You've been practicing this and doing this forever. So most of the time, your emergency responders, your EMS, your fire, your police, if you know some of them guys, they probably live in your neighborhood, hit them up and go ask them for help. Those are the experts, and those are the ones that can help you come up with that emergency plan. Call Blake. Get his emergency management company to help you out, get an emergency plan. Things like that will make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. That's great there. That's something I've worked on over the last year or two is my communications. I like you said, I have a ham radio. I have the stuff. I've done a little bit before with clubs working in county government. I don't have the license. I want to get the license, but I understand a little bit of how it works, but that's something I also want to work on is communications. I've recently got GMRS radios. You have to buy the license for that. But where me and my wife work, we're relatively close and how the bird flies. And if the cell phone, if the grid went down, we could use those GMRS radios to talk back and forth. With my job, I have to unfortunately stay where I am, no matter what happens. But with her, we have a plan of where she would go and all of that type of stuff. And that's one thing we identified is how are we going to talk? If phone service goes down, how are we going to talk? How are we going to communicate? And that was one of them was that GMRS radio. So communications is definitely key. So many people depend on that cell phone, and when that cell phone goes down, or
they're helpless.
If it's slow to send a text message, they're helpless. Yes,
yep.
And that's and as an emergency manager, or anyone in emergency service, people are still relying on that, and it's not people don't even know people's phone numbers anymore. I mean, remember key phone numbers, remember your spouses, remember some family members, and all of that, because you may get to a point where the cell phone it doesn't work, it's dead, and you have to call someone on a landline or something like that. So,
and a lot of people too. Yeah, a lot of people too. And I'll just say this: getting a ham operator's license is great, but nobody's going to care about the ham operator's license if it's a SHTF situation.
Yes.
Nobody's going to care about that. So, yes, work towards getting that license, because getting that license is going to give you the knowledge base on how to use it and how to operate it. But in the meantime, go get one. Just have it and go. I've told people in my show, hit up social media. If you don't know anybody that's a ham radio operator, hit up social media. They're like, they like to show off their skills too.
Oh, yes.
And, as long as you don't use it, you're not breaking the law. You can have it. You can and most all ham radios have an emergency band radio on it. You can listen to police channels. Just get the stuff and don't buy junk. Get a good one. Don't go buy Amazon cheapo special. Get a good radio with good range. Make sure you get like at least an 8-watt. One that's got good reach, and a ham operator can set you up on some local repeaters and get you going with all that, and then at least you'll be a step above. You may not know exactly how to use it, but it's going to give you a big leg up in the event of a real disaster situation.
Yeah, and then you could also listen to it during disasters. Emergency managers, emergency services, we rely on ham radio operators to communicate. During Helene, if you were actually able, there's tons of scanner apps on your phone, and I was able to pull up a scanner app on the ham radio repeaters out there, and I was able to listen to ham radio traffic back and forth. Incredible what they were doing. Saying, someone, in the middle of nowhere saying, hey, can you tell this family member I'm okay? Because I can't tell them, there's no way to tell and all that. Another resource, talk about communications, is something as a prepper you need to have situational awareness and know what's going on. A scanner is definitely a great thing to have. There's so many different options, and if you are serious about scanners, I have a person that I can set you up with. He has a Facebook group. I went out. I've been messing with scanners since I was like 16 years old, and finally in November, me and my wife were like, okay, and she likes listening to it too, so that was a positive. We went out and I found a scanner that picks up everything, that I can listen to PD. I can listen to fire, law enforcement. I can listen to all my healthcare, hospital stuff going on. I went out and paid $700 for a scanner, but that was a good thing for me because now I have more situational awareness of what's going on in my community.
Now you can hear what's going on, and you may get a leg up in a situation that others would not.
Well, there's been several situations. You turn that on the way home from work, and when the wrecks are ahead of you, or know when law enforcement is ahead of you, so that way you're a little bit better prepared. So definitely, there's a lot of different resources out there, and I could talk forever about these types of things. But Jeff, this has definitely been just a great conversation. Great talking with you and learning, more about your show and learning about you as a prepper. Definitely been great.
Absolutely. Same. It's great to collaborate and put our heads together and hopefully get some good content out there for people. And like you said, try to help some people out and the
Absolutely.
same. So,
we'll try to do this in the future. So, all right. Well, we'll see you later. Have a good evening.
All right, Blake. Good talking with you, buddy. Have a good rest of your week.
You too. Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed the episode with Jeff from the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. Hope everyone got something out of that. Like I said, whenever we were talking, the biggest thing for me is, if I could get one person to become better prepared because of what I'm talking about and what me and Jeff are doing in our podcast and social media, I've really done what I achieved to do. So with that, exciting news. We've been running a giveaway for the last 2 weeks. Well, now we've extended it. So if you have not done so, do me a favor, go on my social media pages, go on Instagram, on Facebook, and on there you will either scroll down or it'll be right there. You'll see a giveaway and how to enter to win your own household emergency operations plan. Usually, if you want this right now, go and on my website, it's $10, but I'm picking out 5 people this Friday to win the household emergency operations plan, which, as I talk with Jeff, is essential when starting your preparedness journey. It's really, the foundation of being a prepper is having that household emergency operations plan. So go enter that giveaway for me and go make sure that you share this podcast with everyone and let's get the word out about staying prepared. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. If you're interested in being on the All Hazards Prepper Show, reach out to myself. You can email me at the All Hazards EM Group at gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook, on Instagram, on X. That's how me and Jeff connected, was actually on X. He has quite a big following on there, so definitely go check out Jeff on there if you're interested in seeing his show. Get some great guests on, has some great conversations as well. So hope everyone stays aware, stays prepared, and stays alive out there. The All Hazards Prepper out.